Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jenna, your host. We are going to discuss the spiritual meaning of scars on today's episode. Have you ever contemplated that? Like, we all get scars at some point in our life, right? Some are from injury, accidents, surgeries, birth defects, all sorts of different reasons why we could have scars, right? So have you ever contemplated, is there a significance to why you have certain scars? Now, I will tell you, in past lives, I have seen me die in certain ways that would have incorporated certain scars. And on the current body that I'm currently in, I have certain scars in those areas. So what does all that mean, Jenna? So one of the past lives that I was able to see, and I had seen this past life since I was about 4 years old in dreams, more specifically in nightmares, okay? I had this recurring dream that I was a man in that life and that I had worked for the mob. I was a bookkeeper, and so I knew where all their illicit money went, all right? And so they were worried that I was ratting them out to people, specifically the authorities. So they sent their goons after me, and they roughed me up a few times and threatened me and told me that if I spilled any secrets that they would come for me, right? So fast forward a few weeks and I end up being found by these guys. I hadn't spilled any secrets, but they came for me anyway and they killed me. They shot me. They left me to die on the sidewalk. And so I watched my body bleed to death, and I watched exactly where I was shot. I was shot mostly in my torso, specifically about here, and I have corresponding scars on my body in that area. Now, did it happen in this lifetime from gunshot wounds? No, it absolutely did not. It happened from surgery. But why do I have similar marks in a similar spot? Kind of weird, right? I also have scars here on my throat, if you can see that. I've had tumors removed from my parathyroid in this lifetime. Not once, but twice. Fun shit, right? So I have scars here. We're going to get into the different body parts and what those body parts, the scars, could actually mean. I thought this was going to be kind of an interesting topic, so I hope you guys will like the knowledge that I'm trying to share with this, because I thought it was kind of profound. Now, some people have issues from, maybe it's like sports activities, right? Maybe you played rugby or football and things like that, and you had some really gnarly scars, or you had injuries and you had to have repairs, right? Like tears or, broken bones, things like that. So let's get into where do we want to start with this? We're going to start at the top of the body, okay? So head, face, and throat. That's where we're going to start. So spiritually speaking, scars symbolize transformation, resilience, and testimony, right? Sometimes your scar shows a battle wound that you survived. It didn't defeat you. You endured this injury, this ailment, this issue within the body, and you have a scar to show that you overcame that, right? So that could be part of your testimony. So the marking past wounds, or physical or emotional, that have healed, revealing courage and God's presence through suffering. They're seen as proof of survival, redemption, and deeper understanding, turning past pain into sources of strength, hope, and powerful witness for others, much like Jesus's own scars, signifying sacrifice and love. So if we remember the story of the crucifixion in the Bible, Jesus had to wear a crown of thorns. The thorns were literally about 2 inches long, extremely sharp. And it wasn't just a couple of them, the entire thing embedded into his flesh. And that must have been extremely, excruciatingly painful. He was also beaten with whips and many other things, I'm assuming, but he was beaten so unrecognizable that his own mother had trouble recognizing that it was actually him. So that tells you the amount of scars he would have had he actually recovered from that and healed. He would have been covered in scars head to toe, right? So that's kind of a graphic image of sometimes the scars heal and sometimes they don't. He also would have had nails through his palm of his hand and through his ankles, right? Because he was crucified, he was spread out. His hands had giant nails that held him up to the cross, as well as his feet, and that's how he was suspended on the cross. So I feel like some of us experience a lot of traumatic events early in life. Some of us, it's older in life. And these scars all tell a story, right? So how did I come up with this topic today? Well, at the time you're going to see this, it's going to be the end of December. So a few weeks prior to that, I happened to be scrolling on my social media that I often do late at night, and came across a video of someone I had never seen before. And he was talking about his teeth, how he had been an addict that had gone through recovery, and he had been sober for several years. And so one of his priorities was to get his teeth fixed, because that was something that he didn't want to look like an addict anymore, because he was now sober, he was clean. So he was taking pride in his appearance and trying to like beautify his body. One of those being his smile, because all of his teeth had like broken or rotted. And so he had broken one of his temporary teeth right in the front. It was cracked in half. And so that was the video that I happened to see, was him discussing how he was just so pissed off. The very next day was his date for his permanent teeth to get done. And that he was just so frustrated. He was over it, right? And I totally get that. So I happened to comment on his video, and I said, you know, just make up some silly story. I said, I have lots of scars, one of those being on my throat. And so I got tired of people asking me what it was from. And so I just made up some random crazy story saying, yeah, you know, I got it in a bar fight and yada, yada, you know, you should see the other person. And he responded, that's funny that you say that, because I have a scar on my throat from a bar fight. I was like, that's wild. Okay. So long story short on that, your scars have a story, right? Maybe they came from something that's not super fun and exciting. Maybe it wasn't any big adventure that you went on. Maybe it's something that your body was in pain or distress and it needed healing. And so removing something like a tumor would still leave a scar, but at the same time, it's also healing. So some of these definitely tell a story. So the core meanings of scars are courage and testimony. So scars show you faced hardship, survived, and persisted, proving spiritual strength and God's faithfulness through trials. It also creates transformation and wholeness. They mark spiritual growth, signifying that brokenness can lead to a new life, deeper mercy, and being made whole. Redemption and love. Jesus' scars symbolize ultimate sacrifice and love, offering hope that our own painful histories can be redeemed and used for good. It's also part of our identity. They can become defining markers of one's journey, shifting focus from shame to empowerment, declaring, I am loved, I am saved, and I belong. There's also a cultural and religious perspective. So things like Christianity, Jesus' visible scars after his resurrection confirmed his identity, right? It's not like we had fingerprints back then that we could identify people, or photo ID, right? So scars, birthmarks, or injuries, right? If you knew a certain somebody in town was missing a leg, well, you know that's Bob who's missing a leg, right? It's an identifiable marker. Scars become that as well. So his scars were powerful signs of salvation and the glory found in suffering. In Hinduism, in mythology, scars can denote valor and significant battles, like Ravana's wounds from Airavata, symbolic heroic struggles. There we go. There's also intentional scarring. So in certain cultures, there are certain practices where they scar the body in certain ways as identification of like tribes or villages. Indigenous tribes still do, usually it's tattoos instead of scarring, but a tattoo is kind of still a scar. So I've seen ones where they have like a visible stripe across their face. The Maori usually will do like the chin area of some sort of tattoo. And so we start to see that some of these scars really do identify us as well as tell a story. So there can be intentional scarring. In some traditions, skin marking is a deliberate spiritual expression or a cultural ornament. I don't know why words are so hard today. So spiritual versus physical scars. There's invisible scars that are deep emotional or spiritual wounds that create unseen adhesions in the soul, affecting behavior and relationships, requiring deeper spiritual healing. So one of my favorite things that I do on the channel is shadow work, okay? And why is it my favorite? Well, because it's going to help us to heal those deep emotional wounds or scars, okay? So it helps us to realize that we don't have to operate out of shame. We don't have to operate out of lack. We don't have to hide that darkness, that we can embrace that darkness and realize that a lot of times that darkness actually protected us when we were too weak or we didn't have the courage to face these wounds. And so as a result, our shadow aspect of ourself had to become empowered and strong so that our light side, the side that's more vulnerable because it's on the outside and it's seen, was able to actually take a back seat and recover. Okay, so sometimes we're dealing with invisible scars. Healing. The process involves acknowledging the wound, fear, shame, and choosing to let God's power transform the mark into a source of healing and bold testimony for others. So we're going to start to uncover maybe what are some of these hidden meanings behind certain scars all over the body. All right, so we're going to focus on the face first. So a scarred face archetype speaks not of the injury itself, but of its aftermath, right? And so what this brings to mind is I've seen people who had maybe like a car accident. Let's say maybe they hit their face on the windshield, or maybe they had broken bones, maybe they had lacerations, cuts, wounds, things like that, and they had to get stitched back together. So on the face, it's a little bit harder to hide, right? As a child, in childhood, I had scars on my face that were pretty deep. So when we were little kids, I had a cousin that was just a little bit older than me, and apparently we were fighting over a toy that kids do, and she took her fingers and she literally dug her nails into the side of my face, and I had really deep scars for a very long time. And through many things that I used on my face over the years, I was able to lessen those. And so now you'd really have to look for them to see them. But through my early life and even into my teen years, those scars were still very visible. And so people could see them, especially if they were up close. So I used to hide them under a lot of makeup because I was embarrassed by them. I didn't want to acknowledge the wounds that I had from that. And so I hid them out of shame, out of fear. And so I had probably 4 good finger marks across my cheek that were the whole side of my face. And so I would pancake on foundation and makeup and things like that to try and hide those. As I got older, I started to find skincare was something that I could use to maybe help diminish those and to heal those. And so I used certain things and exfoliating a lot in order to really get rid of it. And I had a lot of bad acne scars as a teen. So I had, some really deep, blemishes and things like that. Some were like cystic acne, which is really hard to get rid of. And so after my skin finally started to clear, I was left with a lot of scarring. And so it was really important to me, not for vanity, but just for self-confidence reasons, to really try and heal my skin. And so you guys notice I don't really wear a lot of makeup most of the time in my videos anymore, a couple of times a week, just because I like makeup. But I really don't wear things like foundation anymore. I don't wear heavy makeup anymore, just eye makeup mostly, a little bit of blush and maybe some lipstick or lip gloss. But that's it. That's all I wear anymore. I like the fact that my skin is healthy. I like the fact that I don't have a ton of acne anymore. I like the fact that I've healed most of the scars on my face. And so my skin is beautiful to me at this point. I don't see the reason to hide it and to wear things that I don't need. And so I've learned as I've aged to embrace what my skin looks like completely naked. So no makeup, no foundation, no concealer, nothing. Literally, it's just my skin, freshly washed, maybe some toner, maybe some moisturizer, and that's it. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to walk around like that. Now, I know a lot of us don't always feel confident doing that, and it took me a long time to get to that point. But hopefully, at some point, we love the skin that we're in. And if we don't, what do we need to do to love the skin that we're in? So it can be a life-defining moment that has occurred, a trauma or a trial that has permanently marked the soul's landscape. So if you think of your face as kind of your identity, right? And some people really do have like specific scars that are very noticeable. And it's like we just get used to seeing people in that way, right? So let's say for an example, you decided that you were going to have some sort of reconstruction to your face or laser removal, things like that to change that. Well, is that you reclaiming your power in some way to alter that landscape again, right? It gives us that confidence that we need or that we're looking for in order to feel like we're at our best. So I feel like our face can really tell a lot of stories. Now, I've had other scars on my face over the years as well, but those were the most predominant ones, was on my cheek from childhood. And they happened when I was roughly a year old. So I carried those for many, many years. And finally, over, decades of really trying to like manage it and get it better, it finally started to go away. That won't happen with all scars. So some scars are very predominant forever, right? But they don't all work out that way. And so sometimes we can alter or change those to make us look a little bit better to ourselves. So we're going to focus on the throat next. Okay, so the biggest thing with scars is that typically they're from some sort of injury or surgery, right? Accidents, injury, surgery, things like that. That's typically what leaves a scar. However, it's not always the case, but I would say most of the time it is. So scars on the throat are fibrous tissues that remain after an injury has healed. The meaning and significance of these scars are primarily medical. In my case, that's exactly what they came from, indicating a history of injury, surgery, or an underlying health condition affecting the larynx, the trachea, or the esophagus. So for me, mine affected my parathyroid glands. I had tumors that were non-cancerous in there. And so it was better for my body if we went in and removed those, not once but twice, so that my body could actually use the natural hormones that it made for parathyroid, which regulates a lot of different things in the body, and regulating calcium, which is actually an electrolyte. And without calcium, your muscles don't contract correctly, your heart can't beat right, so it can be actually quite dangerous. You can also end up with things like a calcified kidney stones, things that really do cause a lot of problems down the line. So for me, it was better to remove it. So surgical procedures, scars often result from necessary medical interventions. You can have things like a tracheostomy, which is where they have to basically punch a hole in your esophagus so that you're able to breathe, right? If your airway's been obstructed and they're trying to preserve your airway, they might have to do a tracheotomy, which is where they make an incision here and they put a tube in there hooked up to a ventilator to help you to breathe. People who are paralyzed from the neck down tend to have those because they're protecting the airway. So a visible scar on the front of the neck indicates a procedure was performed to create an opening into the windpipe or the trachea to aid in breathing. There can be laryngeal surgery. Surgery to remove vocal cord lesions or cancer can lead to scarring on the vocal cords or the vocal folds, which might affect voice quality. I will tell you, I had some vocal cord damage during the first surgery. So they found that under a scope the second go round. They went to go see what was going on first. And they said there's been some minor damage to one of your vocal cords. Now, I didn't know that. I just knew that I could no longer hit really high notes like I used to. I just thought it was aging. I was out of practice. I couldn't do that. I was the first soprano in choir in high school, and I loved to be able to hit the high notes. Now, my talking voice is at a much lower octave than my singing voice was. I can still hit some notes that are pretty high, but I definitely noticed at certain times my voice would feel fatigued. I also noticed things like, not being able to hit the high notes, but my voice would sometimes just go out. It would just like trail off. There'd be air moving, but no sound coming out. And so that was something that I noticed prior to the second surgery. So after the second surgery, I was a little more concerned, like, oh man, hopefully nothing really bad happens. But thankfully things went well. There was no other damage that I could indicate or could tell. But I got left with a nifty scar. So not that it's super easy to see here. Let's see if I can get a little closer. But if you look right here, that's where the scar is. Now, I will tell you, when it was fresh, both times, it was something that was very noticeable. So I'm a pretty pale-skinned person, and when I have like fresh scars, they're usually very bright in color, like bright pink, bright red. And so that being right at the center of your throat and not wearing, if you guys ever notice, like all my shirts are cut, right? I hate having anything rub that area of my body, and we're going to get into the spiritual meaning of that as well. but I didn't like having anything touch my throat. So a regular crew neck t-shirt sits right there and it rubs it. So I refuse to wear t-shirts like that any longer. I cut everything that I own. If the collar isn't already a v-neck, I take scissors to it and I cut the damn thing because I don't care. I want to be comfortable. So that also would be something that resonates with like a witch wound. And I consider myself a little witchy. I like to explore things that are different. And to me, learning is power, learning is knowledge. And I feel like there's so much sacred knowledge that healers, not just witches, but healers have that we could actually benefit from. So on my journey, I have explored lots of these different things, and I do feel like I'm a little bit pagan. And the reason I feel that is I'm very drawn to nature. I'm very drawn to healing herbs as natural medicine instead of pharmaceuticals. I've done with the pharmaceutical stuff. It hasn't been the greatest in my opinion. Yes, there's some things that I feel like are really, really helpful and very necessary to help get you through certain illnesses or emergencies. But past that, I feel like the body should be able to heal itself. And if we give it actual support through nutrition and things like that and sacred herbs, our body does tend to respond a whole lot better. So back to the topic of hand. There could be thyroid surgeries. Okay, mine was parathyroid. So the thyroid sits right here. It's a butterfly-shaped gland, sits at the base of your throat. It's a super important gland that you want to function. And then we have parathyroid, which is teeny tiny, 4 little spots that look like the size of a grain of rice. And that's where my problem was. Okay, my parathyroid had benign tumors in it that they found through random blood tests that I actually went in for a checkup because I was pregnant, and they found it through routine checkup through regular blood panels. So then I had to go see an endocrinologist, a specialist, and they did a bunch more testing and ultrasounds, and they did biopsies, and they said, well, since you're pregnant, we would really recommend we take this out because the baby might be okay, but you're going to be suffering as a result. Your body can't keep doing what it's doing, so we need to take this under control. So we did. So I recovered good. 10 years later, almost to the day, had the second one. So it wasn't much fun. So they said if it recurred for a third time, they would take whatever was left of it out of my neck and they would implant it in my arm so they could monitor it. And I thought, oh, I'd really hope we don't have to do this a third time because that's not very fun. So thankfully, knock on wood, everything has been good for several years past. The last one I had was in 2015. So I feel like spirit is always trying to kind of get our attention through things going on in our body. So if you're dealing with certain things, especially wherever it's happening in the body, what is the significance? Is there like a deeper message behind, oh, well, you're just sick? Okay, well, the emotions that are being trapped or shoved down in that area of your body are creating the dis-ease in your body. So what part of your body is being affected by dis-ease? It needs to be in harmony. It needs to be in balance. So for me, and that's funny, they're playing a Hoser song in my head, something about she's the last true mouthpiece. So for me, one of my spiritual gifts is speaking. And so of course, my biggest issue is going to be in the area that is responsible for speaking, right? My throat chakra. And so when we look a little deeper, the significance of the throat chakra being affected is pretty profound. All right, so the throat chakra, if it's blocked in any way, shape, or form, or it's got issues operating like it's supposed to, you're gonna often see signs of difficulty speaking your truth, okay? And so for me, I shoved a lot of things down for a really long time. I was always trying to keep the peace. I was always trying to, be the better person, okay? That part of my life is over. If you fucked up, please believe I'm gonna say it to your face. I'm not hiding anymore. I have learned that I have to heal by speaking up as long as it's from a place of truth, right? We don't want to spread lies. We don't want to spread hatred. But if it's truthful, if it's factual, then sometimes we just have to say it. It is what it is. So there could be fear of judgment or feeling unheard. And I will tell you that was a huge thing in my life for my entire life. Alongside physical issues like sore throats, laryngitis, thyroid problems, neck and shoulder pain, jaw tension, because it governs self-expression, creativity, and honest communication between your head and your heart. So you might also experience emotional signs like anxiety, low self-esteem, or being overly critical, or conversely, rambling and talking too much without clear points. Okay, I would say all of those I had at some point, right? So all of that energy from not speaking because my head and my heart were battling, where is that? Right in the middle, right? So if your head and your heart can't get it together and they can't be in alignment or agreement, there's a blockage. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's here, okay? So those would be the two chakras in between. We have the crown, the third eye, the throat, the heart. And we have 3 more below that. We're going to get to those. So if your heart and your head can't get into alignment and agreement, the other energy cannot flow. And so alignment is simply a flow state. Things move, okay? Think of like a rolling river or an ocean. There's movement, right? It's not typically completely still. So we need to move the energy. So you can also be feeling emotional or mental symptoms, communication struggles, fear of speaking, difficulty expressing thoughts, needs, feeling unheard, or a lump in your throat. I have had all of those. Inhibited creativity, feeling uninspired or creatively stagnant, right? Stagnant water's bad. We don't want stagnant creativity either. Fear and insecurities, amplified fear of judgment, criticism or rejection, or low self-esteem. Relationship issues, misunderstandings and conflicts due to poor communication, excessive talking, or the opposite, extreme quietness or refusal to speak. Can also create physical symptoms in the throat, sore throat, larynx, hoarseness, mouth ulcers, gum problems, or a chronic cough. Neck and shoulder pain, stiffness or tension in the neck and shoulders and jaw, TMJ issues. Thyroid challenges or disorders, including hypo or hyperthyroidism. And you can have other signs like headaches, ear infections, or facial problems. So what all this means: the throat chakra connects your thoughts or your head with your feelings and your heart. So blockages hinder authentic expression, leading to issues with honesty, creativity, listening, and speaking your personal truth. Pretty big deal, right? It's not just, a sore throat sometimes. Sometimes it's way more than that. Here's a question I would pose to anybody who sees this. Have you ever had an argument with somebody and you kept quiet? You didn't say anything. Is your throat ever really burned as a result of that? Do you ever feel like you had to swallow a lot of shit because you didn't speak up, you didn't say your piece? And so it kind of festers, right? Maybe you come down with a cold after the fact. Maybe it's a cough. Maybe it's a sore throat. Did you ever give any sort of insight into maybe it's the energy that's blocking that and it needs to be released? So just some food for thought. I didn't do a whole lot about the head, so I want to do the head and the third eye as well. Let's do the crown and the third eye chakra. All right, so we're going to start with the crown chakra. We're out of order. It's fine, whatever. All right, so a blocked crown chakra physically shows up as headaches, dizziness, poor coordination, fatigue, sensitivity to light and sound, brain fog, and sleep issues. I've had all of those as well. So again, as a medium, where does all my energy start? It starts in my crown chakra, right? So I have to be plugged in, I have to be focused and relaxed for the downloads to come through. And for many years, I wasn't, okay? I had chronic migraines from the time I was about 8 to 10 years old. And those came on very unexpectedly out of nowhere. I hadn't started my periods yet. I didn't start that for several years later. And so there was no correlation with hormones triggering any sort of migraines or issues. But what was really weird is the only thing that would really help was for me to go sleep in a cool, dark room with no lights, no sounds, and sleep it off. And that worked for a long time. However, as a result of me having this deep sleep, because I was in so much pain, I would have these really vivid dreams. They were visions. I just didn't know it at the time because I was a little kid. So that continued for most of my life, well up into my 20s and 30s, that I was still having these chronic migraines. I was having anxiety attacks with no real trigger, no real cause that could be found, right? Medically, there was nothing that they could really find other than you have chronic migraines. Congratulations, here's some medication, get on with life. So it wasn't until I was much older when I really started to go through my spiritual awakening that I realized that some of this could actually be related to like my gifts needing to be woken up, or, dealing with past trauma and releasing these things so that the energy was in flow state again. So that was a huge eye-opening thing when I realized that the energy that I had been suppressing or shoving down or hiding from was actually spirit trying to communicate through different parts of my body. And so as we get into this, you're going to see that maybe there's some correlations for you in your own life. Do you suffer from brain fog? Do you have chronic headaches? Things like that. Your crown chakra might be needing some cleaning, okay? And there are ways to clean out all of your chakras, and most of them are pretty easy. So let's get into this. So you could be dealing with any number of these symptoms stemming from a disconnect to spirit and purpose. Okay, that's a big one. Leading to confusion, isolation, and lack of focus. It's associated with your highest consciousness. So blockages manifest as feeling ungrounded, lacking meaning, or being stuck in mental loops. I definitely say that that resonated for me when I figured this out. So there's a lot of common symptoms physically that you could be feeling. Neurologically, headaches, migraines, dizziness, light sound sensitivity, brain fog, and confusion. Those can all be related. Coordination and energy. Poor physical coordination, exhaustion, fatigue, low physical functioning. Sleep, insomnia, or the other sleep disturbances, or any other sleep disturbances. Sensory, feeling ungrounded or disassociated from your body, right? We feel all floaty up in the ethers, right? We've got to ground, we've got to come back to our body so we can feel the things we need to feel. You could also have related mental and emotional signs such as spiritual disconnect, feeling isolated, lacking purpose, unable to connect to something greater. Mental fog, lack of focus, difficulty concentrating, analysis paralysis, right? We're just overthinking every aspect of our life. Existential issues, depression, feeling lost, inability to let go of beliefs. So what does this represent? The crown chakra is your connection to universal consciousness. That's a big one, okay? What is universal consciousness? It is that we are all energetically tethered to each other. Every living thing on the planet, we're connected, okay? So we can tap into that energy by listening to our intuition and our instincts. And without that, there is a big disconnect, okay? We gotta learn to listen to our higher self and our higher power. It's incredibly important. So it connects you to universal consciousness, wisdom, and spirit. A blockage suggests that your spiritual energy isn't flowing freely, affecting your mental clarity and your physical grounding. So it's kind of a big deal, right? Okay. So maybe you've got some scars on the top of your head. I've known lots of people, right? You fall as a kid, you bonk your noggin, and you got a gash up there that heals, right? So mentally, you might have a lot going on. Sometimes we've got to slow all those things down in order to actually get grounded, to get back into a flow state. All right. So that's going to be important. So is your crown chakra blocked? Does that sound like symptoms you're experiencing? So let's do the third eye. Let's see what's going on there. All right, so the third eye sits right here in the forehead. Think of it literally as another eyeball, okay? It usually sits in the center of the forehead is where it's depicted as being. Now, you tend to receive information in what's called your mind's eye, your third eye, that chakra, is like downloads of information, understanding, sudden awareness, insights. For me, when I channel, I see imagery in that part of my brain, okay? So it's almost like a little movie is playing in my head. Little images start playing. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's, pictures of things, but that's where I receive a lot of my information when I channel. No matter how I'm channeling, whether it's one-on-one or for a collective reading tarot, whatever, that's where I receive the messages is right there in my third eye, okay? So a blocked third eye chakra often shows up as headaches, especially above the brow, vision problems, sinus issues, ear problems, and sleep disturbances. I have had, I would say, 90% of those. So vision problems, your girl's worn glasses since 6th grade. These are some thick prescriptions at this point. I have what's called progressive lenses. So I have a prescription in the top, in the middle, and in the bottom. It's 3 of them in one so that I can see at a distance, up close, and reading. So vision, definitely, right? Because we're starting to operate from this eye, not these eyes, okay? And so that was one thing that changed for me over the last probably decade, is my eyesight really started to get a lot worse. And not that it had been great my whole life, but I had always been psychic. And so we start to depend more on our third eye as opposed to our natural eyes as we start to incorporate more visions. So sinus issues, maybe you've had trouble breathing, right? I have sleep apnea, so that's definitely something that it's like this area of my body has had a lot of issues. Ear problems. I get vertigo, and the first thing that I notice is that my ears feel really plugged, like I'm listening to something underwater. That's how I know I'm about to have a vertigo episode. Not fun, would not recommend. They really suck. I've also had sleep disturbances. I've had insomnia most of my life. I could be exhausted, so tired, cannot sleep at night, wide the fuck awake. Early in the morning, don't function. I've been that way my whole life. It's like my internal clock is nocturnal. It doesn't want to be awake during the day for the most part. It's not functional very early in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I never have been a morning person. There are times where my body is like, oh, we want to be up extra early. You know, it's the sun's barely awake, but here we are. And then there's other days where it's like, I'm not functional till like 2, 3 in the afternoon some days. So you might have some sleep disturbances if your third eye is all actually blocked. All right, so it can be linked to association with the pituitary or the pineal glands and brain functions, causing mental fog, lack of intuition, and difficulty with imagination or focus, alongside potential hormonal imbalances. Now, I've had some brain scans over the last few years because I've had cognitive issues. I've had difficulty speaking, walking, balance, vertigo, all these things, right? Plus the chronic migraines. So we finally did a brain scan to see if there was anything noteworthy going on. And they did find some changes in the white matter of my brain. So that can create some issues further down the road if it's more, like if things are accelerating, if things are worsening. So far mine looks stable. So they think that it's a contributing factor from all the chronic migraines I've had for decades. So there's changes in my brain. They also found a cyst in part of my brain, which we think is responsible for the coordination, balance, and walking issues that I have from time to time. So let's just say that the cyst sometimes fills up with fluid, and so that presses on other parts of my brain, creating difficulty in my motor skills. And when that pressure releases, it starts to subside and get better. Now, if it was really bad, they could go in and do brain surgery and try and remove that. I'm not about trying to have my brain cut open. So unless it's life or death, that is not happening for this girl. But I will tell you that there's a lot of things that this has caused, these blockages have caused in my life. And so some of this has spilled over into other aspects, right? So it's kind of crazy when you start to look at all the different things that could be going on in your body because of blocked energy, right? And it's really kind of crazy. Now, I'm not saying 100% of this is blocked energy, but I do think that it's a contributing factor to some of our health issues that we're facing. Not all of it's going to be that. Some of you might have had, a traumatic brain injury that caused other problems. That's not related to energy necessarily, okay? So let's use some discernment and some common sense here. I'm not saying everything is related to energy, but I do think quite a bit of it actually is. So we could be dealing with headaches, particularly tension headaches or pain between the eyebrows. Now, I have had tension migraines. Mine always were behind this eye on my right side, and it would feel like it wrapped all the way around here into my neck and shoulders, and it felt like it was just being squeezed or throbbing behind one eye. All of my headaches that I ever had were that way, except for maybe 5. And so when I'd get a headache that was different, I had no idea what to do because I didn't have headaches in any other part of my head for a long time. So very rarely would I have just your basic run-of-the-mill headache. Most of the time I would have a tension migraine, and it was behind this eye. So I thought that was really interesting. Excuse me, hiccups for confirmation. All right, so you could also be having vision issues, blurred vision, eye strain, or sensitivity to light. My eyes are very sensitive to light. If it's really bright, especially if it's snowed outside and I go outside, it's like I'm squinting. Oh man, it's like someone turned the sun on. So I've always had very sensitive eyesight. Sinus congestion, chronic sinus problems or pressure, ear problems, ringing in the ears, tinnitus, or hearing difficulties. Now, I've had my hearing checked in the last year. My hearing is totally fine, but I always have ringing in my ears. It's spiritual communication. Your angels, your guides are trying to talk to you. So if you hear that with no other cause that you've had medically checked out, it is spiritual communication. Sleep problems, insomnia, or vivid nightmares. I've had both. Hormonal imbalances affecting metabolism, blood pressure, or other bodily functions. I've had some of those as well. And neurological symptoms, memory issues, or difficulty concentrating. I've had those too. So there could be energetic or emotional connections to these. This chakra governs intuition, imagination, wisdom, and clarity. When blocked, you might also feel disconnected from your inner voice or intuition, struggling with decision-making or creativity, or feeling closed-minded or lacking insight, right? Because we need to pay attention to the signs that Spirit's giving us. So what it relates to physically or glandularly. The third eye chakra corresponds to the brain, pituitary gland, pineal gland, hypothalamus, eyes, ears, nose, and sinuses, explaining these physical manifestations. So I find this stuff really interesting, very intriguing. So are we noticing any of these things so far? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Do you think any of these are correlating to any sort of scars or any sort of issues that you might be dealing with within the body? So the next one we're going to cover is the heart chakra. All right, the heart chakra physically shows up as a chest tightness, shallow breathing, heart palpitations, poor circulation, stiffness in the upper back or shoulders, or even asthma or respiratory issues. It's linked to emotional themes like fear of vulnerability, loneliness, difficulty trusting, and holding on to past hurts. It affects the heart, lungs, arms, and hands, manifesting as physical symptoms when emotional blocks to love and connection are present. I will tell you, I've also had quite a few of these, all right? Have you ever heard of something called broken heart syndrome? It's quite literally happens after usually a big traumatic loss, like let's say the death of a partner, spouse of some sort, and that the person is so overcome with grief that their heart actually goes into a deadly arrhythmia, and it usually kills people. And it's a very real thing. It's called broken heart syndrome, and it's something that happens to not a ton of people every year, but it does happen. And so it's like emotional damage. And so while it's not a physical scar on the outside, it is a physical scar on the inside. So if you survive that, there's usually permanent damage done to the heart as a result of certain hormones that are released, lack of oxygen and blood supply could be cut off temporarily, and so it actually can lead to death from a broken heart. So it's a big deal, right? These are things that we want to try and prevent if at all possible. So some physical symptoms that you could see as a result of a blocked heart chakra include chest and breathing, tightness in the chest, heart pain, angina, rapid heart rate, palpitations, tachycardia, shortness of breath, asthma, or shallow breathing. Now, I will tell you that I've had heart palpitations off and on for many years. I've had blood clots in my lungs as a teenager that led to asthma and breathing difficulties. So I've had tightness in the chest, I've had shortness of breath, I've had heart pain, I've had these palpitations, and it can be very scary, especially if you're young and you have no idea what could be causing this. So that's one thing that if you are experiencing symptoms like that, go straight to the ER, okay? That could be life or death. It could be something that is internally going on, so please don't ever ignore those. Better to be safe than sorry. Now, The underlying cause could be emotional. It could be emotions that we're shoving down that we haven't dealt with. That can create things like heart attacks in the body. Stress, it could create strokes in the body, things like that. So there's usually an underlying element. Now, that's not saying that's the only cause, but it's definitely something that the research would agree with, that there's definitely some correlation to the two. You could have circulation problems, poor circulation, high or low blood pressure. In your upper body, you could be experiencing stiffness or pain in the shoulders, arms, hands, and the upper back, right? It's all this tightness around the chest. In general, a sensation of emotional numbness or a heavy heart. Those could definitely be some issues working there. So common emotional and mental signs of a blocked heart chakra are difficulty trusting or forgiving others. That was a huge one for me. Sometimes it still is. I'm still human after all, right? So let's say somebody slighted you, somebody really hurt you emotionally, and instead of learning to release that pain and not harbor those feelings of pain or resentment, we store those internally. That tends to create issues. If you think of energy, let's just say if you think of energy as like a ball of light, okay, let's picture like a little circle of light. And let's say when we take that energy into our body, it gets stuck someplace, right? And so in order for it to move, it's got to go out somehow, right? Up or down, it's got to come out. And so let's say there's something stuck right there in the middle and you won't acknowledge it, you ignore it, you shove it down, you keep getting angrier and angrier, more resentment, more hostility. That energy is circulating around, but it can't go anywhere. So it's just stuck right here, okay? And so we start to have issues in that area of the body because the energy cannot go past it. It can't flow any longer. So you're cut off from everything from the chest down, okay? Your stomach, your sacral, your solar, and your root chakra, they're all being cut off by this energy that's toxic. It's harming our body, all right? So we've got to learn to express, right? Because it's got to come out. We've got to let go of that somehow. So we're learning how to release what is being trapped, okay? This ball of energy. So you could be having difficulty trusting or forgiving others. There could be loneliness, isolation, or feeling disconnected. Fear of vulnerability or rejection in relationships, right? Because we won't open our heart space. We've been hurt already. Holding on to past pain, resentment, or jealousy, and struggling to give or receive love and affection. The heart chakra is a big one, okay? Your heart chakra is like the center, all right? And so if that's not operational, you're having problems up top, you're having problems below because it's literally the center of who you are. So if your heart chakra is in alignment, we're going to start to be able to be open. We're not going to hide so much. We're going to be able to give and receive love and affection freely, because we aren't blocking that flow. So I feel like that's a really important one as well. They're all important. Every single one of these is important. So the heart chakra governs love, compassion, and connection, linking to the lungs, the heart, the thymus, the arms, the hands. When energy flow is disrupted by emotional trauma or fear, these physical areas often manifest the imbalance. So are we starting to see a pattern in some of these? So our body is responding to the energy around us. And so if our heart chakra is blocked, we're unable to give and receive love, which leads to us feeling lonely, which leads to us feeling emotionally drained. It leads us to feel rejected, all of these things, right? So we've got to be in a flow state. Our next one is the sacral chakra. Apologies, sacral is next, it's solar next. So if we're going in order, it's the crown, the third eye, the throat, the heart, and then the solar, which sits right below the heart in the top of the stomach. It is bright yellow. It looks like the sun. That's why it's called the solar chakra. Okay, so a blocked solar plexus or solar chakra often shows up physically as digestive issues. Ooh, tummy trouble, right? Your girl doesn't have a gallbladder. I have a scar right there. I'd show you, but that's inappropriate. So take my word for it. It literally sits right below my sternum, my breastbone, in the center of my stomach. So I have a scar there. I have a scar in my belly button. And I have two scars that I mentioned earlier over here on the side that correlates with a past life of gunshot wounds. Wild shit, right? Okay. So, a blocked solar plexus or chakra often shows up physically as digestive issues, indigestion, IBS, eating disorders, nausea, a knot in the stomach, upper abdominal pain, sluggishness, mid-back stiffness, skin breakouts on the torso, fatigue, and general lack of energy. That's a lot, right? Holy cow. So, stemming from emotional stress, fear, and low self-worth affecting your personal power and digestion. Kind of a big deal, right? So I've also had stomach issues. Okay, I had my gallbladder removed as a teenager because I had gallstones. Wonder what I was shoving down. Probably a lot. So my life was very stressful. I had ulcers, another stomach problem. I've had my appendix taken out. I've had a total hysterectomy, so all my reproductive organs, all that shit sits in your stomach, okay? All of that. So instead of expressing all of these things that were bugging me, I shoved the shit down. I buried it. And my body, as a result, took a major hit in that area of my body. Now, as a result of not having a gallbladder, I still have stomach issues because you're unable to digest food how you used to. So I had to change my diet for a long time. I couldn't eat certain foods or I'd have a horrible stomach ache. One of the weirdest things I noticed is that I couldn't chew on mint gum after my gallbladder was removed. It created a lot of burning in the center of my stomach where my biggest incision was, the one that I pointed out up the top here, where guess what? Your solar plexus or solar chakra is. Okay, so digestive problems, indigestion, irritable IBS, there we go, nausea, knot in the stomach ulcers, or eating disorders, pain and stiffness, mid-back stiffness, general sluggishness, elbow pain, tennis or golf elbow, or knee pain. Why would those be related? That's kind of weird, isn't it? Energy and fatigue, feeling heavy, sluggish, or having low energy, skin issues, breakouts or rashes around the torso or abdomen, breathing, restricted breathing, or shallow breaths. Are we starting to see a pattern how the energy isn't just localized? Typically, it's like your whole body needs some sort of healing. So, related emotional and mental signs, lack of power, feeling powerless, lacking confidence, or struggling to set boundaries. The boundaries was a big thing for me. I feel like I was the world's doormat for years and years of my life. And now that I'm not, now it's like I don't have a whole lot of people in my life. Why? Because I'm not a people pleaser anymore. It doesn't work for me. It created problems within my body. And so no is a complete sentence. Sometimes you just don't want to do these things. That's okay. Say no. Unless it's life or death and you really have to do something, you can choose to say no for most things in life. So hold your boundaries. Control issues, becoming overly controlling or micromanaging. Ding, 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 this girl, okay? I blame it on my Virgo placements, but let's be real here. A lot of it stems from trauma. Needing to control things because my life was out of control for years and years and years. There were things that were literally out of my control I could not do anything about. So that created problems, right? Created a scar. Energetically, it created a scar. So I became a control freak. I became a micromanager, and I'm still working on unraveling that mess. Creates fear and anxiety, constant fear, anxiety, or perfectionism. That's what the control really stems from. When things in your life, and I learned this in therapy, I had a great therapist for years. When things in your life are chaos all around you and things are out of your control, we start learning coping mechanisms in order to create or gain control, right? A semblance of normal, as he worded it. And so one of those is that I was having anxiety and panic attacks all the time. So one of my coping mechanisms was that I would clean incessantly. I would just clean and clean and clean. I would make things look perfect to my brain. I would have certain things in a certain spot, and that gave me a sense of peace. It's like, okay, well, everything's perfect now, so now I can relax. In reality, internally, nothing was perfect. My brain was just going crazy because I had so much fear around things I couldn't control. So it created another issue of perfectionism. And I'm still struggling to overcome those things, if I'm being quite honest. There's still certain things where it's like, it's not done right unless I do it. It's not done right unless it's perfect. And that's not a livable thing to achieve on a regular basis, is perfection, because nothing's ever truly perfect. But internally, we start to try and create that in order to calm us down. Hiccups for confirmation. All right. It could also create procrastination, difficulty taking action on goals and dreams. So why does all of this happen? The solar plexus, located in the upper abdomen or the navel area, governs personal power, self-esteem, and willpower, and it is closely linked to the digestive system. Blockages often arise from fear, stress, or feelings of helplessness, impacting these areas and manifesting physically as digestive upset or a heavy feeling. So how are we going to fix some of these things, right? We're going to get into that. This is going to be a long episode, so hopefully you guys hang out. So our next one is the sacral chakra. All right, so sacral chakra blockages. A blockage here physically manifests as issues in the reproductive, urinary, and digestive systems, including kidney problems, low back hip pain, urinary issues, constipation, and sexual or reproductive dysfunction, alongside emotional struggles with pleasure, creativity, and intimacy, leading to numbness or emotional futility. It impacts organs like the bladder, the kidneys, reproductive organs, and the lower abdomen, affecting circulation and fluid balance. So, I had a total hysterectomy at 28 years old. Okay, I had a lot of issues going on. I had fibroid tumors, I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, I had endometriosis that was spreading. So at that point, I had already had 4 beautiful, healthy children, and I knew that I was done having children. So to me, it was like, well, let's get this mess dealt with. So I opted to do a total hysterectomy at 28 years old. For me, it was the best decision of my life because I started to get my body back. I started to get my health back. And that was something that was really important to me. I was going through a really horrible divorce. I lost custody of my kids during that time. So all of that energy that was stuck in my lower stomach created a lot of problems. Now, I had had a lot of trauma early in life from sexual abuse. I had had a lot of encounters in my life that were very unpleasant. And so those were things that at the time I didn't know how to deal with. I just kind of shoved them all down, had to pick up and carry on with life. And so I never dealt with that trauma until much later in life. And by then it had already done a number on my physical vessel, on my body. So you might be dealing with some of these things and not realize it, right? Those might be something that maybe you went through similar experiences in your own life and didn't realize that there's a correlation to some of these things. So reproductive and urinary issues with reproductive organs, infertility, impotence, urinary problems, or kidney dysfunction. Creates digestive issues, constipation, poor detoxification, or intestinal problems. Musculoskeletal, low back pain, hip pain, pelvis issues, joint problems, and general lethargy. I have had low back pain and hip issues for decades with no real cause other than a car accident. And at this point, all of that should have been healed, but I still have hip issues on one side. The other side is totally fine, but there's been no physical injury to that part of my body other than the trauma from surgeries. So that one was really weird. So I feel like there's certain parts of the body that maybe we harbor all these negative feelings in, and it creates disease within the body. So there could be a correlation there for some of us. Circulatory issues, poor circulation affecting the flow of food, water, and energy. And there can also be some others listed as anemia, hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, fatigue, and low energy. So it can also create emotional and mental symptoms, often accompanying physical issues. Emotional detachment, feeling numb, isolated, or disconnected from feelings and pleasure. Creative blocks, difficulty expressing creativity, joy, or passion. relationship struggles, fear of intimacy, betrayal, or commitment issues, excessive or repressed emotions, emotional highs and lows, or being consumed by your emotions, addictions, using escapism like food, sex, or drugs to cope, associated areas, the location of the lower abdomen, below the navel, at the sacrum, the element of water, right? Flow state in the womb. Associated organs are the kidney, the bladder, reproductive organs, the spleen, the lower spine, and the hips. So as we can see, some of these could really be affecting other parts of your body. So the last and final one is the root chakra, and it's also very important. So I always find it funny that this is actually my last name is Root. So those of you that didn't know that, that is my actual last name. I did hair for years, so we always had a joke that we had to touch up our roots. Last name, pun intended, okay? So the root chakra is really important. The root chakra sits at the base of your spine and between your legs and is what helps us to ground our energy, okay? And so we have those 7 main chakras that run down the length of our spine. And the root chakra is incredibly important. Think of a foundation of a house, okay? You need a strong foundation to support the walls and the structure of the rest of the house. Without that solid foundation, you're going to have problems, okay? We don't want things on shaky ground. It works the same for your vessel, for your body. Without grounding, we are up in the ethers. We're out there floating around doing willy-nilly things. We need to come back to our body. We need to ground regularly. Those of you that know me in real life know that I'm almost always barefoot, okay? Not that I can fit my leg up here to show you, but I'm currently barefoot, and I'm almost always barefoot unless I leave my house. And then I will put on shoes to go out in public. But inside my house, even outside in my yard, I'm usually barefoot. Even in the wintertime when it snows, I'm usually barefoot unless it's really, really cold and I have to go outside for something, then I'll put on shoes. But even a few times I'll go step in the snow and ground my energy real quick. Barefoot is really a good thing because it helps us to have no barriers to ground our energy, and it literally happens in milliseconds. So what happens is there is an exchange of ions or atoms from our body to the earth. And so without getting crazy into this, you have to be able to ground your energy often so that you're in a flow state. So maybe you had a really rough day at the office, okay? Go ground, go touch a tree, go sit out in nature, touch grass, water, sand, dirt, as long as it's nature, right? That's gonna help you to ground your frequency, your energy. So those are very real things that we need to do. Humans weren't meant to sit in an office all day staring at screens. We were meant to be compatible with nature, and that's why we're able to exist here on this planet. So it's very critical that you go out and you ground often, okay? Maybe it's too cold where you live and you can't go outside. They sell grounding mats for a reason, okay? You can invest in something like that if you're unable to get outside. But even a few minutes every single day is going to help you energetically to feel grounded, and it's a really important thing. So a blocked root chakra often shows up as physical issues related to grounding, survival, and the lower body, including lower back pain, leg and foot problems, constipation, digestive issues, fatigue, weight changes, weakened immunity, and issues with the bladder, colon, or prostate. It all stems from feelings of insecurity, anxiety, or being ungrounded in life. So some common physical symptoms: lower body and elimination. Sciatica, I've had that. It's not pleasant. It's nerve pain, basically. It's a pinched nerve in your lower back, basically in your butt cheek, and it runs from your back all the way down to your foot, and it's extremely painful, and I've had that for years off and on. You can have pelvic pain, knee issues, foot problems, constipation, diarrhea, bladder issues, and prostate problems. Energy and vitality, chronic fatigue. I've also had that too. Weakened immune system, feeling restless or lethargic, and difficulty sleeping. Weight and appetite changes, weight gain or loss, eating disorders, or comfort eating. General body, pain in the intestines, lower back, or your feet. So related emotional, mental signs often accompanying the physical issues: fear, anxiety, insecurity, feeling unsafe, lack of motivation, feeling stuck or ungrounded, financial worries, survival mode, and low self-esteem. What can this represent? The root chakra governs our sense of physical stability, survival, and connecting to the earth. When blocked, it disrupts our basic needs for security and belonging, manifesting physically in areas that are tied to our foundation and primal survival. Pretty crazy, right? I thought this would be a cool episode. So let's see how we can unblock all of these. We're going to start at the crown and we're going to work our way down. All right, so we know what a blockage looks like in all of our chakras. What does it look like when they're open, when they're in flow? Okay, because that's what we want them to all be in. Now, I will tell you from personal experience, there's lots of things you can do to clean these out, okay? Clear them out. So one of those is listening to meditation music specifically designed for that purpose, okay? And some of them are very short, maybe 10 minutes long. Some of them are hours longer, so it depends on what you want to do. But you don't even have to go that far. You can literally sit or lie down. I recommend lying down because I feel like you're more relaxed that way. With your eyes closed, you can put on meditation music if you choose. And what I want you to do is to start envisioning the color of each of the chakras. So they're the color of the rainbow. Makes it easy to remember. So we have violet. Let's see. We have indigo. We have blue. We have green. We have yellow. We have orange. And we have red. Okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to picture like a circle or a wheel that's spinning in a circle really, really fast. And we're going to use that color to envision that spinning. Now, when you first start doing this, you might not see that, okay? It might look dark, it might look dim, it might look slow, like it's not turning at all. That would indicate energetically that there is a blockage or an issue in that area. So you can envision in your mind these wheels or these circles spinning. So let's take the crown chakra, the color purple. So you're going to, with your eyes closed, envision the color purple in a circle, and you want to see that circle spinning really, really fast. And that means that it's clear. You're going to do that each one all the way down. You can spend a few minutes or a lot of minutes doing it. It doesn't matter. But over time, you're going to start to notice that your body starts to feel different, okay? And one of the things that I would tell people is you want to drink plenty of water. You want to make sure you rest accordingly. And you don't want to do too much too fast because you will feel these things starting to energetically change, meaning that you're going to feel physical symptoms changing in your body. So one of those could be digestive issues, right? You're clearing out. Let's put it this way, okay? We know what pipes in a house look like, right? Water pipes, drain pipes. And let's say there's a clog in a toilet, okay? Well, all that shit's gotta leave somehow, right? So all the junk in those chakras has to come out. So maybe you throw up. Maybe you're getting rid of something and it comes out that way. Maybe you get diarrhea and it's gotta come out that way. But it's going to move. So I want you to be aware of that. Now, if it's excessive, maybe you don't do so much clearing all at once, okay? Maybe you pick 1 or 2 chakras at a time and you clear it out that way. But you will start to notice that things do actually energetically shift and change. And I can tell you when I first started doing this several years ago, I had digestive problems. I had diarrhea for days. Stuff was clearing out. But I felt so much better after the fact. And no, I wasn't sick. No, I hadn't caught a stomach bug, things like that. It was the energy that was actually moving. So this is a very real thing. So when the crown chakra opens, you might feel tingling, pressure, or warmth at the top of your head. I noticed that in mine. So I almost felt like little fingers, like little tingles up at the top. And it actually felt really neat. I actually really thought that was cool. So you could feel things like that as your crown chakra opens. Experience mental clarity, deep spiritual connection, heightened awareness, or euphoria, alongside potential energetic shifts like fatigue, headaches, or sensory overload as energy moves, often accompanied by increased sensitivity and synchronicity. It signifies spiritual awakening, transcending the physical and feeling unified with everything. So physical sensations during and after. You could experience head tingling, pressure, a distinct buzzing, tingling, or pressure on the crown, warmth or energy flow, a feeling of light or energy flowing down from above, headaches, fatigue, intense headaches, dizziness, or exhaustion as the energy shifts. Sensory changes, heightened sensitivity to light, sound, and strong smells. Body vibrations or spasms, uncontrolled energy surges, or shaking. Mental and emotional shifts, clarity and focus, deep understanding, mental peace, and lack of confusion. We love that. Spiritual connection, profound unity with the universe, oneness, or divine insights. Joy and euphoria, intense feelings of bliss, love, and spiritual ecstasy. Detachment, feeling disconnected from worldly concerns or even the body disassociating. Common accompanying symptoms, often part of the process, are synchronicity. I love that. That's one of my favorite things of the crown chakra. Noticing meaningful coincidences, numbers, or events. Angel numbers. If you watch the Angels 101 podcast, you're going to see we talk about some of those things as well. Your intuition, stronger gut feelings or psychic awareness, changes in diet and sleep, cravings for lighter foods or disrupted sleep patterns. You might sleep more, you might sleep less. You might have sudden food aversions to things that just no longer align with your vibration. So what you can do, ground yourself. Yoga is definitely one that can help. Downward dog or corpse pose, walks in nature, and healthy eating. Rest. Allow for deep rest as the body adjusts. Journal. Document experiences and insights. And stay open. Embrace the shifts without overanalyzing. Trust the process. Let's get into the third eye. All right, so when your third eye starts to open, the chakra, expect a physical sensation like forehead pressure tingling between your eyebrows, right there, right in the middle. Headaches, eye strain, and sensitivity to light alongside sinus pressure, ear ringing, hiccups for confirmation, and vivid dreams or sleep changes. You might also feel neck tension and experience changes in vision, hiccups for confirmation, like seeing auras or light patterns as your intuition sharpens and your consciousness expands. Common physical symptoms: forehead or head pressure, pulsing, tingling, or numbness between the eyebrows in the third eye area. Headaches, migraines, or a general head pressure is often in the forehead. Eyes, soreness, redness, increased sensitivity to bright light, photophobia, or seeing lights and auras. Ears, ringing or other sounds, tinnitus. Sinuses, pressure or congestion. Neck and shoulders, muscle tension and or stiffness. Sleep, vivid dreams, insomnia, or changes in sleep patterns. Related experiences, dizziness or feelings of vertigo. Visuals, seeing colors, patterns, or light fractals when eyes are closed or during meditation. You might start to physically see things in your mind's eye, which is exactly where it's supposed to be. And increased intuition, stronger gut feelings, enhanced foresight, and knowing things before they happen. Important notice, while these spiritual experiences are common, persistent physical pain, intense hallucinations, or significant distress warrant a medical checkup to rule out health issues. So make sure that you take that into consideration. If you just start hallucinating, chances are it's probably not your chakra, you're experiencing something else. If you have a horrible headache that feels worse than you've ever had, that is known as a thunderclap headache that needs immediate medical attention. You could also be having things like strokes. Don't ever ignore the symptoms your body is giving you. However, if you've had a medical checkup and everything was an all clear, chances are it is your energy that is trying to align. So let's talk about the throat chakra. All right, throat chakra. Physical symptoms of a balanced open throat chakra involve clear, confident voice, healthy neck, throat, good hearing, and ease in expression. While imbalances manifest as a sore throat, stiffness, hoarseness, thyroid issues, jaw tension or headaches, and difficulty speaking or listening, they signify a need to express truth and to listen openly. Signs of a balanced or open throat chakra: clear communication, speaking your truth clearly, honestly, and compassionately, while also being a good listener. Does you no good. It's a two-way street. You've got to also listen as well as communicate. Physical comfort, freedom from tension in the neck, jaw, and shoulders. a healthy voice, no hoarseness, laryngitis, or a constant throat clearing. Have you ever been around those people where it's like, it's like, okay, you got something going on there. All right. So you might need to deal with that. Good hearing, openness to receive information and understanding others. Are you open to listen? Because a lot of people aren't. They talk with the need to respond. You want to be able to actively listen, not with the intent to respond. Did you really hear what that person said to you? Are you taking it all in? Because a lot of people don't. I feel like that's a global problem. All right. Physical symptoms of a blocked throat chakra, a need for opening, voice issues, hoarseness or a sore throat, laryngitis, stammering, a fear of speaking. A lot of people have that. Neck and jaw tension, stiffness, pain, or disorders like TMJ. Thyroid problems, issues with the thyroid gland as it is associated with this chakra. Headaches or ear issues, frequent headaches or problems with ears, mouth, or gums. And physical restraint, feeling physically unable to express yourself or communicate needs. I feel like that's also a big one for a lot of people. So it's an important note that these are energetic concepts from Eastern traditions. Always consult a doctor for persistent physical symptoms like thyroid problems or chronic sore throats. Okay, so don't ignore your body. Let's get into the heart chakra. All right. When the heart chakra is opening or realigning, individuals may experience various physical sensations, often related to the chest, heart, and respiratory system. These symptoms are typically considered energetic shifts rather than medical conditions, but persistent or severe pain should always be evaluated by a healthcare professional. Common physical symptoms include chest sensations, a feeling of warmth, pressure, heaviness, or expansion in the center of the chest. Heart rate changes, noticeable heart palpitations. I definitely had that. Fluttering sensations, or a temporarily increased heart rate. Temporary, okay, not permanent. Breathing changes, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, which may later give way to the ability to take deeper, fuller breaths. Back and shoulder tension, pain between the shoulder blades, or general stiffness in the upper back and shoulders as energy blockages release. Circulation issues, temporary changes in blood circulation, such as cold hands or feet that may improve over time. Other sensations, tingling in the arms or hands, excessive sweating without physical exertion, or general feelings of lightness. These physical signs are often accompanied by emotional and spiritual symptoms, such as increased empathy, compassion, mood swings, emotional release like crying or laughing unexpectedly, and a deeper sense of connection to others and the world. For guidance managing these energetic shifts, you might consider exploring resources on chakra balancing through reputable sources like yoga or qualified energy healer. Things like Reiki can also help the body. So let's see, we're on the solar plexus. All right, when the solar plexus opens, you might feel physical sensations like warmth, tingling, or pressure in the upper abdomen, alongside digestive shifts, bloating, appetite changes, increased energy, deeper breathing, and potential muscle tension release in the core or the back, signaling increased personal power, confidence, and a clearer purpose. Common physical sensation and changes, abdominal sensations, heat, warmth, tingling, pulsating, or gentle pressure in the stomach area. Digestive shifts, improved digestion, less bloating, or conversely, sudden hunger or cravings as the digestive system recalibrates. You might also notice you're craving more natural foods, fruits and vegetables, in order to actually nourish the body, especially in that area, and give it what it's craving. Energy boost, surges of vitality, motivation, and feeling more awake. Breathing changes, taking deeper breaths or becoming more aware of your diaphragm. Muscle release, a noticeable loosening of tension in abdominal or mid-back muscles, and nerve sensations, tingling or numbness in the abdomen or limbs. Linked physical and emotional manifestations. Emotional release, sudden bursts of anger, frustration, or fear, often with physical tension release. Now, there's something called stomatic release where it's like you do certain exercises to actually get that stuck energy to leave. That's something that I've seen people where it's like they have a release of that and they just uncontrollably start like laughing or crying. And it's something that it's like, how did that even happen? It's that energy. It's being released from those muscles in that area of your body. Increased willpower, strong self-esteem, confidence, and clearer sense of purpose. Boundary setting, feeling more capable of asserting yourself and establishing personal boundaries. That's a big one for a lot of us, and what it means. These physical signs often accompany a spiritual shift towards greater self-empowerment, confidence, and personal direction. So these are something that your inner fire, your self-worth, and your ability to act on your will. So it's a big one. They're all big. They all need to be in alignment. So that would be the solar. So let's go to the sacral is our next one. All right, sacral chakra opening. When your sacral chakra opens, you often feel increased creativity, emotional fluidity, passion, pleasure, and better connection to your body physically. This can manifest as improved digestion, flexibility, energy flow, and reproductive or urinary health, replacing sluggishness with vitality and a sense of being unstuck in life's flow. Emotional and mental signs. Heightened creativity and joy, a surge in creative ideas, playfulness, and finding pleasure in simple things. I feel like a lot of us have blockages in that area of our body. And so it's almost like we need to remember how to have fun again, like that childlike sense of wonder and happiness. It's a big deal. Emotional balance, feeling more adaptive, less reactive, and able to experience feelings without being overwhelmed. Increased intimacy, deeper emotional and sexual connections, feeling safe to be vulnerable. Again, it's a big one. Reduced fear, letting go of fear of change, intimacy, or judgment. Physical manifestations, improved flow, better digestion, circulation of food or water, and elimination. Energy and vitality, feeling energized, less sluggish, and more alive. Body connection, feeling comfortable and present in your body, increased flexibility, and organ health, support for reproductive organs, kidneys, bladder, and your lower back. Imbalance versus opening. Signs of an imbalance or a blocked sacral chakra are often the opposite. Feeling stuck, numb, creatively blocked, experiencing digestive issues, or low libido or emotional detachment. An opening signifies moving from these states to fluidity, joy, and creative expression. So we start to see a pattern here. If something is blocked, we're feeling kind of ugh. If something is flowing, it's a lot better energy, right? It's that flow state. It's positivity. So our last and final one is the root chakra. All right, so root chakra. When your root chakra opens or balances, you feel grounded, secure, and present, experiencing physical sensations like more energy, reduced anxiety, and improvements in areas it governs. Your legs, your feet, your tailbone, lower back, colon, immune system, leading to relief from issues like constipation, sciatica, and lower body pain. It's a feeling of stability, safety, and being connected to the earth, replacing fear with confidence, and vitality. Some key physical signs of an opening root chakra include increased energy and vitality, feeling less lethargic, more physically present, and active. Grounding sensation, a strong feeling of connection to the earth, feeling stable and supported. Improved lower body function, relief from issues like sciatica, knee pain, or leg fatigue. Better elimination, resolution of constipation or other digestive or bladder problems. Stronger immune system, a general feeling of robustness. Reduced physical tension, less unexplained aches, cramps, or pain in the lower body. What it replaces, signs of imbalance. A blocked root chakra often manifests as fear, anxiety, financial insecurity, and physical issues like lethargy, digestive problems, lower back pain, and issues with legs and feet. Opening it shifts you from this state of survival and fear towards feeling safe, confident, and firmly rooted in your life. In essence, an open root chakra brings a sense of I am safe, I am here, physically felt as stability and well-being from your feet up through your core. So, are you in alignment? Do you have some maybe emotional scars that you need to work through? Do you have physical scars that might need some emotional or energetic healing as a result? Some food for thought this week. I hope you enjoyed this. Do you think you have some blockages? What chakras do you think, based on this information, do you think you have some issues to work through? Do you want to actually open those chakras so you're in a flow state? Or are we holding on to this deep-seated pain and blocked energy? Some food for thought. So I'd be curious to know, did you notice if any of your chakras happen to be blocked or unaligned? Where do you need to start? It's always a good spot to start at the root chakra because that's your foundation. So I personally would recommend, if you're going to do any sort of clearing on these, that you do it either under a guided meditation. You can find tons of resources here on YouTube. They are free. You sit and listen to the music and it activates these areas of your body. I would focus on one or two of them at a time and go slowly, okay? So you give your body a chance to kind of realign. This isn't something where we want to do a complete and total overhaul in like 10 minutes. That's not how that works. It's going to take some time. Think about how many years you might have been shoving these things down, right? So it's going to take some time to heal them. But I would say over the course of a few months, you will really start to notice some big changes. Sometimes it's very quickly, within a few minutes to a few hours, you start to feel better. So it's different for everybody. But I would recommend you start at the root chakra, so the one that sits at the base of the spine, and you go up in order. The reason we want to go in order is because that's how things tend to come back into alignment in the best way. So start at the root. We go from the root to the sacral, to the solar, to the heart, the throat, the third eye, the crown, okay, in that order. So we're going to go in order from the base to the crown. And the reason why we want to do that is we need a solid, stable foundation, and then the rest of it starts to come into alignment. So I hope you found this information useful. I hope everybody has a happy, healthy new year, and we'll see you on the flip side in the next episode. Have a great rest of your week.